The British Grand Prix is over, and it was victory for Lando Norris and McLaren as he continues to close the gap to teammate Oscar Piastri in the Drivers' Championship. But now F1 is moving from Silverstone to Spa for the Belgian Grand Prix, which means that once again it is time for my preview and predictions. This is a series where I'll be previewing and then at the end of the video giving out my early predictions for the Grand Prix. If you enjoyed the video then please hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now though, let's get into the video. As usual, I'll be talking about the top teams later on, so please do stick around for that. Yep, F1 is heading from one classic circuit to another as it returns to Spa for the Belgian Grand Prix. And the race at Spa also sees the return of Sprint. Sprint was previously held at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit in 2023, and the typical Belgian weather meant that we got to see plenty of rain around the circuit. With it being a sprint weekend, the teams will therefore only have the one practice session before heading into sprint qualifying on Friday. Then on Saturday, it will be the sprint race in the morning, followed by Grand Prix qualifying, before of course the main Grand Prix as usual on Sunday. Much like Silverstone and the British Grand Prix, Spa is known for having crazy weather conditions, and rain can appear at any moment to cause utter chaos. The Belgian circuit is also a classic, with plenty of high-speed corners and iconic corners such as Eau Rouge, Pouin and Blanchimont, just to name a few of the corners, but it also features some very slow and tight corners, such as La Source at turn 1 and the tight bus stop chicane at the end of the lap. It is also the largest circuit on the calendar, as the circuit length is 7 kilometers long. This means that it is also the race with the least amount of laps at just 44 laps, but they are typically a very enjoyable 44 laps. Due to the nature of the circuit, teams tend to run with lower levels of downforce. This is because there is a lot of flat out sections. However, we do sometimes see teams try to run with a little bit more downforce to gain performance through the corners, especially in Sector 2, but they do tend to then be weaker in Sector 1 and Sector 3. This is a circuit all about compromise. Do you go with a corner performance in Sector 2, or do you want the straight line performance in Sectors 1 and Sector 3? The Spa circuit is typically not that difficult on the tyres, despite the high-speed corners, as they do get some form of rest down the long Kemmel Straight, but tyre wear does still need to be monitored. Pirelli has opted this year to do something a little bit different with the tyres, and we see a gap in the compounds, because the hard tyre is the C1 tyre, the medium is the C3, and the soft tyre is the C4 tyre. The reason for the split is because Pirelli want to try and encourage the teams to use the softer tyres. Last year they took the C2 to C4 tyres like normal, and there was a total of 34 pit stops, with the drivers using one set of medium tyres and 2 sets of hard tyres, typically anyway. With Pirelli opting to move the hard tyre to the C1, then I expect we will see a multi-stop race, with a soft tyre and 2 medium sets of tyres. However, there is a chance that we might see some teams try to do a simple one-stop, using a set of medium tyres and 1 set of hard tyres. Overtaking at Spa is typically pretty easy given the length of the Kemmel Straight, and last year there was a total of 33 on-track overtakes. To help with overtaking, the Spa circuit features 2 DRS zones. The first DRS zone is on the exit of the final chicane and goes down the pit straight towards La Source, and the second DRS zone is on the exit of Eau Rouge, or Radion, whatever you want to call it, on the run down the Kemmel Straight, heading towards Les Combes. Last year, the pole position lap time was set by Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, and he set a time of a 1:53.754. But he was not actually the fastest driver in qualifying, as that went to Max Verstappen, who set a 1:53.159 in Q3. During the pole lap, Charles Leclerc reached a top speed of 319 km per hour, or 199 miles per hour. Again, that is because it was wet, so there was no DRS. In the Grand Prix itself, the race fastest lap was set by Sergio Perez in the Red Bull, and he set a time of a 1:44.701. This year, I expect both times to be beaten if it is dry. I just want to say if you are enjoying the video so far, then I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now though, let's get back to the video and let's talk about Red Bull. For Red Bull then, the British Grand Prix was not their best day out at the track. Yuki Tsunoda had yet another race to forget with another dreadful result, a long way away from anyone else who finished. And teammate Max Verstappen would have had a great race if it was dry, but unfortunately the low downforce gamble didn't pay off due to the rain, and you could really see him sliding and struggling for grip during the wet portion of the race before dropping it when the safety car was coming in. Once the circuit dried out though, Max started to carve his way through the field, and it would have been a likely podium result if he didn't spin. With that now, Max Verstappen is 69 points off of Oscar Piastri in the Drivers' Championship, but we are at least heading to a circuit which has historically been a very strong place for Max Verstappen and Red Bull. In the last few years, we've seen Red Bull and Max take a power unit penalty here and then carve their way through the field and still win the race. It is the right type of circuit for Red Bull to work at its best. It is front limited and high speed. I expect Max to go well here, especially in qualifying, but if they are forced to use the softer tyres in the race, then I can see Red Bull struggling with tyre wear compared to McLaren, so it could be a little bit difficult for Verstappen to win the Grand Prix. For Mercedes then, it was not a solid race for them either really. They gambled on the dry tyres at the start of the race, and well, it didn't really work out for them. If it dried out quicker than they were hoping, then they would have been looking great. But instead, it rained again, and Russell and Antonelli both dropped back because of it. After that, Kimi Antonelli was rear-ended by a blindsided Isaac Hadjar, who just couldn't see anything with the spray, which essentially ended Antonelli's race. Russell recovered and scored some points though. Heading to Belgium, this is a race where Mercedes won pretty easily last year, as it was a 1-2, with Russell winning from Hamilton, before of course Russell was disqualified for being ever so slightly underweight. The general cooler conditions of the Spa circuit should definitely help Mercedes, along with the circuit surface kind of like how it did in Montreal. With that in mind, we could see a good weekend from Mercedes. For Ferrari then, the British Grand Prix was a mixed bag. For Charles Leclerc, it was a disaster class of a race. He stopped for dry tyres at the beginning of the race, which turned out to be a massive mistake, and to be honest, he never really recovered from that. After that, he was struggling for grip and pace, and he had a few offs during the Grand Prix. It was definitely one to forget for him. Teammate Lewis Hamilton though had a much stronger showing, as he was able to finish in 4th place and was so close to scoring his first podium for Ferrari. However, he was beaten by an even more impressive Nico Hülkenberg in the Sauber, and for Hamilton, this was by some distance his best Grand Prix performance of the season. He looks to be starting to get to grips with the Ferrari car at last. Silverstone has always been a strong circuit for him though, so it will be interesting to see how he gets on at Spa. If he beats Charles Leclerc here, then it is fairly safe to say that he is finally on top of the Ferrari car, but Ferrari will be hoping that the race is dry, because the car is not great in wet conditions, as you can see even Lewis Hamilton was struggling for grip in the wet portion of the Grand Prix at Silverstone. Finally for McLaren then, it was victory for Lando Norris after Oscar Piastri was given a 10-second time penalty for a safety car infringement. Until then though, the race was all Oscar Piastri, as Oscar was dominating the wet portion of the Grand Prix. But after this moment, it was inevitable that Lando Norris would win, especially as Oscar Piastri started to drive really angrily. The gap between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri is now just 8 points, and with a sprint weekend in store, then there is more points on offer, which could really help change the face of this World Championship. I expect McLaren to be strong, especially in the Grand Prix, if they have to use the softer tyres during the race, but I am not too sure that they will get pole position at this circuit. That doesn't mean though that I don't expect them to win the Grand Prix. So with that in mind then, what are my early predictions for the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa? Well, for pole position, I am going to go for Max Verstappen and Red Bull to get pole position. because I expect their one lap pace to be very, very strong, especially if it is dry, kind of like what we saw at Silverstone. But with that in mind then, what are my top 5 results for the Belgian Grand Prix? Well, in P5 I'm going to go for Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, P4 will be George Russell in the Mercedes, P3 will be Max Verstappen in the Red Bull despite starting on pole position, P2 will be Lando Norris in the McLaren, and yeah, I'm going to go for Oscar Piastri to bounce back and win the Belgian Grand Prix. But those are my thoughts. The question is, what do you guys think will happen? In the comment section down below, please do let me know. And as always, comment, leave a like and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.